Hi, my name is Rocco, and this is my intro. Sorry about the construction in the background. I don't know why vehicles always have to be so loud, but they're always so loud. Hi everybody. I wanted to give you a quick tour before we get into the heaviness that is fall and winter here on the homestead. As you can see, there's a little bit in disarray, but we are working hard to get everything tidied up before the snowfall. We're pretty excited it's fall because there's definitely a lot more things in the garden that appreciate the cooler weather. This giant State Fair pumpkin has been doing fairly well. We've let it trellis along the ground here because the main root and stalk of the plant had got infected with the vine borer beetle, and it seems that everywhere that has had a place to kind of tendril and attach to is doing really well. So we're very, very hopeful that we might get just something from this plant. We did have a misfortune of finding out that fly maggots for onions are definitely a thing in our area. So these onions are not going to be ones that we are saving. However, we haven't pulled them out of the soil yet, but we will be tilling them back into the garden beds and not using them. The calendulum is doing wonderful. I just deadheaded a bunch, but I also picked off a bunch of the new blooms. So there's not a whole lot left on this plant outside of one or two I left for the bees. And likewise, that bunny grass has definitely seen better days. This bed here, the one corner is doing fairly well. We still have this marigold that's nice and shining, and then we do have our jalapeno pepper plant. But you will notice the rest of the bed is pretty much done. So at the back there, you'll see we had a couple cherry tomato varieties. In this bed, we also had an eggplant. We also had two other peppers that weren't doing anything, and we just said we've had enough. We don't want any more maintenance. We don't want any more of those varieties anyway, so we pulled everything out. This is real life of living in the city. We have helicopters, we have construction, we just have geese flying overhead. Oh my goodness, it's never a quiet day here, but this is one of the main reasons why it's so important to not maybe look at our life and glamorize it, because a lot of people have said they really wish they had what we had garden bed wise. But do you hear this noise that we're subjected to? Your girl wants the country, your girl wants next to no neighbors. I just think it's gonna be better. You know, anybody else hate the noise? So getting back into our bed here, our cinnamon basil is in full bloom still and attracting many pollinators, so we have left it. But the garden that you see here that's empty was where all of our onions were. So again, they're all gone. There was maybe a handful that we were able to keep, and we certainly had harvested a few early ones that had no issues. But a lot of our later varieties definitely had some maggot fly issues, so we pulled them all and compost them. This Brandywine is still doing pretty well. As you can see, there's quite a few green tomatoes still left on it, so we're just waiting for those to blush up. This bed, not doing so great. We do have some beets that were in those planters there. I don't think they'll have enough time to go to maturity, but I have left them to see. We have been harvesting some turnip, but the majority of the rest of the bed got pulled up. So there's not a whole lot growing in this back bed either. We do have a couple pepper plants at the front here, but we've only been getting 1s and 2s off these plants, minus the shishitos. They're prolific, but we're kind of over the flavor. Kind of probably sounds like we're pretty ungrateful for what we have here in the garden. So we're definitely looking at ways that we can focus in on what we really enjoy in the garden. And then with what we currently have now, we're looking at ways to preserve it in ways that we enjoy or pass along to people who will enjoy it. Dill is definitely something we have kept most of. I've currently been working on drying out these ones for dill seed. Going so well. I just love the look of dill. I think it's really pretty. These are corner dotoro peppers. We haven't harvested any, but as you can see, there's some pretty large ones. We're just waiting for them to turn red. This front area here, we only have a couple patches of carrots. They're coming along. Haven't harvested really any that have been good and viable in the sense of length and girth. Too small for me so far. This bed here, you guessed it, she's empty. Stay tuned for why we dug out that side. This bed here, I did put a little bit of support because we have some mini bell peppers here at the front and they were getting pretty floppy. Just harvested most of the beans that were on this trellis here. And on the back side, we do have some peas that are ready. Now, I have noticed that we're starting to get some mildew on these plants, so I don't foresee them sticking around much longer. Usually when my plants get bad like that, I tend to rip them out because I don't personally think that the vegetables and fruits on them are viable. You just want to be careful with stuff like that. Here we have a couple more turnips. They're just growing, getting larger. The majority has been taken out of this bed. Probably in the prior video we still had our trellis, but it's been removed because I did not like the beans that were on them at all. They did not taste good whatsoever. In this bed here, it's also kind of getting a little bit shabby looking, I guess you could say. We have some sweet potato. Now they are doing pretty well. We've checked a little bit on them by digging and pulling back a little bit of the soil. But for the most part, we're waiting because we're pretty impressed with how that plant kind of popped off. Marigolds are still doing well. Gem glass corn, not as much. I was certainly impatient this year. I pulled off quite a few ears that were not ready, and also too with the wind and cutting back the sunflowers that we had as stabilizers here in the corner, I found our patch started to get kind of not so nice. So we actually started chopping some of it back, and I will be drying some of the tassels as well as we put some at our front of our house for some decor. Kale is doing fairly well, and marigold, I just deadheaded it so it looks kind of shabby. The rest, all weeds. Coming over to this bed, it's certainly a bed that's also on its way out. So the marigold, they're doing pretty well. But we did have all of our ornamental squash, and we did have all of our Jackby little pumpkins here. And as you can see, most of them have been pulled out, but we are still getting a couple flowers. We had a couple blooms this morning, so I'm not ready to pull everything out. Anything that's dried up and turned completely brown is gone, but for the majority, even with the powdery mildew that's on it, I have been trying to keep these plants alive because you never know what they're going to produce come the cooler temperatures. This bed isn't necessarily enjoying the cooler temperature. It's our tomatoes, and tomatoes prefer something that's a little bit warmer. So I do have some tomatoes that I've picked off yesterday sitting on our deck and sun ripening just a little bit more, because that's usually my tactic, is just pick them when they're nice and red or mostly red, and then let them sit for just a day or two out on the deck and kind of get that final warmth and softening up. But this bed here is kind of on its way out, and to be honest, I'm not too mad about it because we do have plans to kind of switch things up for next year, and that involves both of these beds, including this luscious, beautiful pepper bed, which will not give up. It will never give up. But the plans do include having these two beds clear. So unfortunately, we're kind of at a stop still until that happens. But I shouldn't say unfortunately too much because it's still providing us with a great harvest. This bed here, no, that's questionable. this section at the front here is our purple amethyst beans. Now I have picked the majority of them and froze them for future use, and we've obviously used a ton fresh, and we are still getting a couple blooms, so I have left them for now. But some bush beans are a determinate variety, so I'm not too sure if I'll be getting too much more off of these plants. The mini bells, they're still producing and changing colors, as you can see all those pops in there. They are kind of falling over on my beets here, so I have been trying to pick them up, but I could certainly use some trellising systems. Now with these ones here, these tomatoes are black cherry, and these ones are patio tomato. Not even sure that's a word. The tomato, they're on their last legs out, I would say. So that is one thing that will happen with this bed, is being able to pull everything out and continue with our plans. I didn't want to miss out on this one over here because I realized I haven't really shown it in a while, but this is our strawberry log. And we noticed this morning it's still giving us a couple of flowers. Now, we don't think any fruits will come of this. It's certainly in its state where it's starting to go into dormancy, but it's completely filled out. There's tons of runners, and we are very thrilled to see what happens with this next year. Our herb bed is definitely also something that we're excited for next year. This should be perennial. Oh, screeching construction. Sorry, folks. This should be perennial, and we are looking at options to kind of cover it to preserve it a little bit better come the winter, just because we're not really sure how perennial beds work, if we need to help them out, or the whole reason they're perennial is because they do their thing. Never a dull day here, folks. This bed here, we finally got some mulch in between all of the rocks, and I love it. It kind of looks like a little fairy tale. It's not completely done. There's a little bit of things we want to do, but with the cooler weather, we have noticed a lot of things have been really enjoying the drop. And so we are getting a lot of blooms popping up. We're getting a lot more of flowers that had died off during the summer come back, and overall it's great. So this section does need a little bit more mulch because we did run out, but you can see the cardboard is there for the path. Secondly, we do have this other bed here. I just put that thyme in the center because this spinach, it unfortunately didn't work. And coming over here, we haven't come over here in a while. Things have kind of started to batten down for the winter. I've cut back my bunny grass, moved down some pots that we had sitting on the corner of the deck here, and just really started to get together, I guess, everything that was on the deck. A little bit of a harvest. And, well, folks, that's pretty much it. So I hope you enjoyed this noisy tour of the garden. It's still really beautiful. Still very blessed to have it all. Thanks for watching. I always forget to bring you guys up here. And it has been mentioned that a couple people want to see what's going on. We've started to decorate for the holidays because we've grown all of those pumpkin and gourds by ourselves. And again, we've started to clean up here too. So we do have this section here that's going to be our bulb garden. There's already some bulbs from the springtime that were cut back there. Ignore this terrible mess. It's an overgrown rose bush that we try to get rid of. But over here we do have a bunch of mulch laid down. Now we won't be tending to this season, but it is going to be prepped for it in the springtime, and we're hopefully going to plant a couple more perennial plants that will come back year after year and provide us with great foliage. This bed here is doing very well. It's still bringing in all of the monarchs. So much color. absolutely loving the grass too. So fun. And then over on this side, our hostas are going out for the season, but that's typical of them. They usually start blooming in the spring for their foliage, and then their summer flowers come out. And likewise for the peony. A peony is a spring flower. So right now, this is just big and bushy. So there you go. There's the front yard. I'm gonna go hang out with that guy. Hey, Rocco? Hey, what do you think? Are you excited for Halloween? Me too, buddy.